Squatting or even deadlifting with sleepy glutes doesn't feel good, which is what kind of makes me think along the lines of that anterior pelvic tilt is like this antidote. It's like this number one enemy to strength. And then I think about the sprinters. Then I think about a lot of the, world famous athletes that we can think of, from all the sprinters to LeBron James to a lot of the NFL players to a lot of the rugby players. They all have a slight anterior pelvic tilt. It just makes me wonder. It's one of those things that I haven't worked out in my mind what the hell is going on. Because on one hand, I'm thinking to myself, okay, the glutes can't contract fully if they're locked in partial extension. If the hip flexors on the other side and that whole complex on the other side is chronically short, tight, and that tissue is unlike normal muscle tissue, that's kind of like wiry stuff. Like you can't fight that. When that locks down, the glutes cannot exert complete contraction. They can't shorten fully against that. And so you have this weird setup where the glutes look like they're really big and muscular and well hypertrophy, but really what is really happening is you're sticking your butt out, you're rotating your pelvis into an anterior pelvic tilt, and you're basically rendered half capacity of strength because the glutes are agreed upon to be one of the most powerful muscles in the body. So what do we do about this? And what do we make sense of all these athletes? When you think about running, it's a lot of hip flexors, right? Because you got to raise your knee to sprint. But then on the other side, you have to push off with your glute. So I think no matter who you are and what athlete, what level you're on, there's always this yin and yang. There's always this like balancing act between the two. Sleepy glutes is weird. Now, man, my mind's racing all over the place. Now I'm kind of thinking along the lines of, do you remember me telling you guys, or do you remember all those occasions where I've woken up from sleep, I come out and I feel strong. After a night shift, I come out like 2, 3 p.m., go to the gym, no food, no nothing, go to the gym and I feel really strong. Now it occurred to me, maybe it's because I've been lying down basically all up until that point, and then all of a sudden I'm lifting. And so the hip flexors maybe have relaxed a little bit, and now I can use my glutes to the full extent and I feel strong. Versus I've been sitting for 4 or 5 hours, lazing around the house. I've been in a seated position for an extended period of time. Those hip flexors are locked down a little bit. Go to the gym and I can't extend. I don't feel poppy. Maybe it's just a function of what have you been doing in the last 4, 5, 6 hours, the whole day prior to the gym. If you've been sitting, it's likely that you've shortened to a degree. You've shortened those hip flexors, and now your glutes are fighting against an immovable object. They just literally are locked out. They're locked out of the hips. They can't do anything. Now I'm thinking about the hip pain, the whole journey. I'm trying to put all these eggs into one basket, trying to make sense of all of them. What's hip pain? I don't know. I don't know what my hip pain is, but all I know is I've been really good this year. Lots of high repetitions. So what do high repetitions do? Well, they bring a lot of blood into the hips. I often get a glute pump, lots of repetitions, lots of ATG positions. So I'm stretching and strengthening at the same time. My glutes are feeling really on board. And my anterior pelvic tilt has felt better than in some other times where I've just gone full heavy. Singles, doubles, triples, that kind of thing. Sleepy glutes. And how do you fight them? How do you fight the sleepy glutes? Hip thrust is an obvious one. Glute bridges is an obvious one. What about lunges? I think lunges are a good one as well, because you are contracting one glute, lengthening the opposite hip flexor, and you keep going. Alternating between the two. So you're stretching the thing that needs to be stretched, and you're contracting the thing that needs to be contracted. It's a weird thing. Like yesterday, I'm telling you guys like this whole bits and pieces of the whole thinking process that led me to going to the gym yesterday. And jumping on the glute thrust machine. Glute thrusting, hip thrusting, whatever you want to call it, bridging. That is purely glutes, and you feel the glute contraction. And then you walk out of the gym and you feel freaking fine, man. You feel good. You feel poppy. You feel unlocked. If you guys remember, I've done a whole bunch of time doing marching, pre-exhausting marching before squatting. What does that do? Well, maybe what that does is just pre-exhausts them, right? So they start to let go because they're simply exhausted. And then the glutes can exert their force upon a weakened enemy. You feel good doing that. I've felt good doing that. And a bunch of you guys have said to me, when you march as well, prior to deadlift and squats, you feel good as well. We've just weakened the enemy. We've chipped away with a different exercise before we come to the battle. And now we can manhandle that thing. But then, of course, we go and we sit for more than half of our waking life, and we restore that function back in. It's an interesting concept, and it's one of those concepts that I've thought about with many different things. Like I've said many times before, I've got a bench press basket, I've got a deadlift basket, I've got a squat basket, and sometimes these baskets can share some of these thought processes, like what's happening with the bench press? Why is the bench press? What are the locking agents for a bench press? Is there something that's similar to a hip flexor that kind of locks you in? What's the thing that makes things really, really hard? Once again, let's go back to the 21st century man. What do we do a lot? We sit on computers, we sit on desks. What does that involve? Short chest, rolled over shoulders. Is that what we need to bench really well? A lot of these things are kind of cooking my mind, and I think to myself, like, none of us can become first century people overnight. You're not going to go hunting before you freaking start squatting. It's not going to be like that. So we're all stuck into this 21st century model. What I'm thinking along the lines of is there something we can do, keeping that in mind, is there something we can do before we start moving the barbell? Marching is one great thing. Doing hip thrusts, sub-therapeutic hip thrusts, just to get the thing on the board, right? Just to fire up the glutes. There's a whole host of things that, like, I was watching the NBA today, Milwaukee Bucks and the Sixers, and I'm looking at those boys warm up. Like, they don't just go for a jog and all of a sudden they're into a full sprint, launching threes and playing defense. Like, I'm watching some of these trainers, what they're doing with them, with the bands and walks and this, that, the other. Like, there's some thought to that. And I wonder whether a lot of that is also structured upon, like, which muscles are the ones we need to unlock so we can have proper function of the body. What do we need to do? I really struggle with this idea that, we just, spend 8 hours in the office and then we come to the gym and we just get under the bar and go. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me, because the primary mover in all of this, let's say the glutes, you've been sitting on top of them, literally like choking the hell out of the blood out of them, and you've been locking down the other guy on the other side, the hip flexors. So now you have this starved muscle stuck in a long position, fighting against a hip flexor which is short as hell. And now we need to go into hip extension for both squats and deadlifts with 100% innovation, 100% expression. It just doesn't make sense, man. Like, I think there needs to be some sort of a warm-up. And I'm not talking about just, go do some high kicks and just do some, starfish jumps, whatever the hell they're called, and some burpees. There needs to be some sort of structured, thoughtful approach on what you do and how do you unlock the potential power. Like, see, this is the thing. Like, every single day you come in, there's this potential. And I think a lot of us are playing way underneath the potential that the body is willing to go, because we can't even tap into it because of all these restrictions. It occurred to me, like, this whole thing with night shifts, I just spoke about recently. What is so special? Because we can talk about the hormonal aspect and the fasting aspect and the adrenaline aspect of sleepless, long nights or whatever, all this sort of stuff, and like hormonal stuff. But what about the fact that I've just woken up out of bed and my glutes are in a good position? Like, I'm literally standing horizontally, right? I'm not sitting when I'm sleeping. I'm basically standing. I don't know how you guys sleep. I'm usually on my belly or on my back, sometimes on my side, but like, I'm never loaded in a seated position when you sleep. So you haven't sat for 6 to 7 to 8 hours after a sleep, and you get up and you move and you're all right. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm thinking about the glutes. I'm thinking about the guys. It's kind of like this, man, right? Every team in the NBA, every team in sports has the best player. Imagine if you can't use the best player. They're injured. What's that going to do to the performance of the team? It's not going to be good, man. So let's say, what are the MVPs of the body? What is, like, the powerhouses of the freaking body? What are we talking about here? What is the star player, the superstar? I immediately think of the glutes. I don't think there's any other stronger muscle and more important muscle than the glutes. Yes, there are other important players, role players, but I think the glutes are the shit when it comes to squats and deadlifts. I could be wrong, but I think that is the main guy. That is what we structure everything around. What's the upper body equivalent? Is it the pecs? Well, it can't be the shoulders because that's not the biggest looking thing. What's it going to be? The triceps? Maybe for some monkeys that are hanging off trees, it's going to be the bicep for them because they're like in flexion all the time. We walking mammals on the ground, we need to be in extension. So maybe you can make an argument for the tricep and the quad because we're fighting gravity, we're walking. What's the main guy of the upper body? Lats. I definitely see lats. That's a huge freaking muscle. So let's say glutes and lats. You have those two guys playing really well, uninjured, uninhibited, warmed up really well. This is going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle. You're getting the best out of the body if you got the lats and the glutes on. That makes sense to me. I mean, I haven't given this much thought. This is obviously not rehearsed. These are just thoughts as they come in and go in my mind. But the lats and the glutes seem to me like they are the main guys. And everything else is structured to support them. The core, the adductors, the hamstrings, the calves, tibialis anterior, all that stuff that we talk about, that's all there. But how about we warm the freaking MVP up, man? How about we get him going? So what are you going to do before your session that's going to unlock the glutes? Have you ever got a pump in your glutes before going to squats? I mean, that's not a thing that happens to me. I don't think about that. Maybe we should. Appreciate all of you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.